Hello and welcome to Sound Like, where today we're going to be looking at Showbiz. Now, guitar wise for this song I'm going to be using the Manson MA2 Evo with Sustainer because I want to. So this video is going to work by starting with pedal cam. I'm going to show you all the pedals and the sounds that I'm getting from my board that I use for this song, and they're going to show you them in their raw form, just on their own, and what they kind of sound like just generally. Then we're going to move step by step for the song itself, the intro, the verse, the chorus, and the solo, and then the outro. Each of these sounds that I get, there's some variations that we can get from this board. Might give you some ideas of how you can take your own gear and move forward with it, or might give you an idea of the sorts of sounds and the sort of gear that you might want to get for yourself down the line. Now with the intro out of the way, now let's get into pedal cam and see what pedals I'm using. Okay, so here we are at pedal cam. Now for Showbiz, I use patch 7, which is my trusty old faithful patch, which is good for pretty much almost anything. So a quick run through is Whammy, blues driver, delay and phase 90. B is Whammy, overdrive, distortion, phase 90. C, fuzz factor in phase 90, and finally D is Whammy, Big Muff, and phase 90. Now to open the song, we go for this kind of like clean tone, which just sounds like this, with the phase 90 on. The gain is all the way down here, so it offers no real boost, offers no real drive. It just offers maybe a slight boost and a slight increase on the higher frequencies with the tone. So it's a bit more of a it's less of a warm tone. It's more of a kind of direct, crisper sound than the overdrive distortion, which is at mostly towards the overdrive side of things, because it's a Showbiz era song. It sounds like this. Which is great, it works for pretty much the entire album. And C, fuzz factory, sounds like this. And finally over at D, which is a Big Muff, is like this. Now throughout the entire song, the phase 90 can be on or it can be off. We'll kind of jump between both sounds when we get into the deeper diving sections of this. If you've got a phase 90, Showbiz sounds great with it, but if you've not, it's not the end of the world. It's just a subtle modulation effect, only at 9 o'clock, nothing fancy. So that's pedal cam, and now let's get into the actual song. So for the very beginning of the song, we're going to go over to patch A with the blues pedal, so just a light bit of a boost there, and it sounds like this. Now it's worth pointing out I'm on the bridge pickup for this. A lot of people say that if you want to kind of stick true to the sound of the studio album, you should be using the middle pickup position. Take the modulation off because there's no modulation in the song normally, and then it would sound more like this. You know, which is okay, but if you really were going to aim for capturing the sound of the studio version, then you'd need to get all the exact same kit that Matt used, is my argument. So this is more of a contemporary vision of how that song works. So it's more kind of how it sounds live, but in the still normal standard tuning instead of E flat as to how it's done live now. It's just an observation of mine, so it's kind of smashing both versions together. So the song starts with this all the way up to the kind of the bigger riff. It's on the same patch, same preset, same amount of distortion, if you could call it that, and we're going to be sticking with the phase 90 on this one. So it just goes like this. So the overall sound is quite subdued, with the addition of the delay, which is the level is at, for how I've got it, is at 12 o'clock, and the feedback is more at 10 o'clock. It's not there to add a huge amount of ambience, it's just there to kind of get a bit more depth to the sound itself, to kind of help with that kind of like darker tone, the really subtle feel. Then that just keeps going until we get to the bigger riff, and then we kind of heavily contrast that with switching over to what I use is the Big Muff to really get the most out of the kind of riff itself, because it's all on one string, there's no chord in it. That's where I feel most comfortable to use a Big Muff, and with the kind of the mid-range boost of the pedal itself, it's really great for it to switch over. Is also just a fantastic comparison and great dynamic range for the song. It's really good. I absolutely love this sound. With the Phase 90, it's not something I always go for. So that goes on until, in theory, the actual the chorus comes in, because this is now just the verse. There's two ways you can kind of really play this. It's to stick with that the whole way through, or until the song gets this kind of like second part of the build-up. What you can do is roll off some of the gain going into the pedal, so either rolling back the volume part on your guitar or on your volume pedal if you've got one, or switching over to a lighter distortion, although that might be a bit too much, because then when you come to put in the distortion for your chorus, it will kind of elevate it even more. It's just something that you could try. It would sound like this. So we're going to go from full down to kind of half. It's really, really subtle. For the kind of the way that my pedal is set up, it really kind of really does pull out a lot of the kind of like the body of it. And the drive is still there, but it just kind of it subtly does bring back some of the energy, but not in a kind of sapping the kind of the life force out of it. But it's just something you might want to try. It's something that I've kind of have really played with over the years of playing Showbiz. So that's the verse and the intro kind of done. Then we're going to go on to the chorus. Okay, so for the chorus now, I'm switching over to patch B with the overdrive distortion, with mostly to kind of more towards the overdrive sound. On the pedal itself, it's between 10 and 11 o'clock, if you want that for reference. And it will sound like this. It's really, really good. It's not there to kind of be dramatic and say, you know, hey, I'm a guitar, hear me strum. It's just there for purely a rhythm, the way I see this. So the way to kind of enhance that is kind of leaning more towards the overdrive kind of side of things with this. But the Phase 90 does add that really nice modulation to give some sort of character to it, because they're just chords. It's not doing anything clever to kind of like mimic the kind of the vocal line for it. But the way I see it, it's purely just there for just a rhythm kind of feel, obviously. But the Phase 90 does help give it that character, that colour to it, and it's really, really good for that. So the chorus is the same for the first and second chorus, and then for the third one post solo, it's a bit different. We'll get into that later. So this covers the territory for both of these kind of choruses. Same amount of phase and modulation going on there, and the same level of distortion. There's no increase or decrease the way I play it. So it's very simple, very straightforward. And so let's go into the kind of like that middle breakdown bit now. Now with this breakdown section, there's two ways that I approach playing it with the pedals at my disposal. They're both fuzz tones. They're either the Fuzz Factory or the Big Muff. As with some songs, it really depends upon the kind of like the mood I'm in, the kind of the feel I want for the song. But it's great to have options for these sorts of things, and especially options that are really easily accessible. We'll start with the Big Muff, and I play it like this. That's one way of playing that section. You could have more emphasis on kind of doubling up both the octave and the riff itself with that, so it's more like... That's leaning more towards just holding the root note of the F sharp and then trying to play the... So there's two ways that you've got to kind of play around with this, and having two different kind of distortion settings really does help to kind of accentuate one of them. The Fuzz Factory, the way that it's set up currently, which is kind of the Velcro Fuzz, which is normally how I have it most of the time, is kind of limiting for the sounds that you can really get with this, because it just offers too much and it sounds horrendous with chords, like it's awful. But it kind of works for kind of stuff like this. It's alright. If you've got a Fuzz Factory, you want to kind of use it for this, I'd suggest just sticking with the riff itself, which is just... or in the higher octave. The main reason for switching the distortion, or the kind of the overall sound of, at this section, is just to have a palette cleanser, some sort of tonal shift to kind of go with the kind of stripped back, pulled back nature of this section in the song. So that's where I'd suggest changing it up. Going over to my version to my patch A doesn't really work at all, because there's not enough distortion there. So it would be like... The delay offers something very interesting tonally, but with the distortion, the way I have it set up for this channel patch, is not enough. So if we had so if we just switched it up to have more distortion for that section, it might sound better. Interesting, sure. But I prefer to have it dry with no delay, no anything else, just the distortion and the kind of the modulation in there as well. That's just a personal preference, but it does help kind of really separate these kind of colours tonally, the way I see it, and it kind of brings it all together, because we've used, for example, the Big Muff in the earlier section. Now it's the same amount of distortion and drive and so on, it's just got more oomph behind it, so it's the same but just more explored, and because there's more power going into your playing. And then it goes into another chorus, which is exactly the same as before, as I said already. So we've explored that territory now. Now we're going to look at what the solo does and how that looks. So we're coming now from the second chorus now into the solo. Now, unsurprisingly, I switch over to the Big Muff once again, because these are single notes. We want these to kind of really stand out. The phase 90 is on again, as it's been throughout the entire song. Now, because it's been out the entire time, it might be a bit tedious to kind of hear. So throughout the entire song, it's your choice to whether use a phase 90 or some modulation in there. I sometimes have it on, sometimes I don't, but for the purpose of the demonstration, we're going to keep it on for this section, as we've had throughout the rest of the song. So then the solo just goes like this. That's it, really. It's not kind of really crazy by pulling all sorts of weird kind of chord shapes or doing anything really fast. It's just going up the neck. Without the song to listen to it, it kind of loses a lot of its meaning. It's quite difficult in a way to kind of play properly, because it relies on the kind of the beat the rhythm to kind of play up, so I kind of messed up the beginning. But it works contextually with the song on its own. It just sounds a bit kind of weak. It sounds like there's nothing special about it, but with the rest of the song it really, really works, because it's been following the vocal line the whole way through. That's been going on, and it just works so well with the rest of the song to kind of bring this weird kind of feel and this intense kind of feeling to the song, which is why I would say why it's such a popular song with kind of hardcore Muse fans. This song was never a single, but this song has kind of remained one of the top fan favourites for years, as we've seen for the by request shows that happened a couple of years ago, time of recording. This song remains kind of a fan favourite, and I think, whether people know it or not, I reckon this solo has kind of helped with that, but that's just my personal opinion. So the Big Muff, it's a total sidetrack. So the Big Muff is on the entire time that section is going on, really pushing the mids, really helping it to kind of come through. The Fuzz Factory, again with the way I've set it up, is completely inappropriate for that sound. Just give an idea of that. And then they build up. It's just sapping everything out because of the rate of compression on it. And then the overdrive distortion in theory would work, but because it's the same sound that we've been using for the rhythm, tonally it wouldn't really stand out. And I hold the belief of, if you're going from one section of a song to another, for example a chorus to a solo, you really need to change that sound up, whether it's from adding a delay to it or completely changing up the distortion sound is kind of key for that. If you're going to have one sound throughout the entire way of the song, when there's kind of clear tonal feel changes for it, you really need to do that with the pedals that you're using. I never really rely on one distortion sound for an entire song. It's just a personal preference because of my background for the degree I did, for example, kind of having multiple flavors and colors to kind of work with tonally really helps. So having on my board multiple different distortions and fuzzes really helps kind of acquire those different sounds. So for like a solo like this, I much prefer to use the Big Muff for that. And then for the final chorus, there are two options. There's a running theme so far throughout this whole song, but there are two options for this. You can break the rule of using a Big Muff for chords, which would just sound like this. Interesting. If I do that, I much prefer to, as I just did, just strum the strings once, and then just let them ring out. Otherwise, it might get a bit too much. It might sound a bit too muddy. You might want to do that if you're coming out of the solo and you want to keep that same bite going on. The first run through of the chorus. The second one, I would then suggest kind of switching over to your normal rhythm tone for that. Just again, add some different variety with the tools that you may have. I'm quite limited really with the sounds that I've got for this, so I stretch those out for as long as I can. Or I switch over immediately to the overdrive distortion and individually pick do some alternate picking with that. That's just for the first round, and then the second round I would suggest that you kind of go back to kind of full strumming, so then. So there's two options there for you to work with. There's kind of plenty of variation in between those two options, but those are kind of, for me, the way I see it, the big options that are going on there. If you've got another distortion that you might want to kick on to kind of up the ante, either have it even to have it go even further out there. You might want to try that. The only option I have left for my board really is the prime distortion, which would sound, the way I have this set up and the way I see it might be too much. It would just kind of create a wall of sound. With pedals like that are kind of very bright at the end, even though I have it kind of rolled off a bit, they don't really work so well for full chords, which is why most choruses and so on I use my overdrive distortion, because it has a lot of applications and it's very versatile in the way I use it. So I much prefer to go back over to it and then changing it up by doing the individual picking. It's just an option, and when you want to come to play Muse songs, particularly, maybe even older ones, but actually doesn't really matter for that, their entire career, just think about how you can get different sounds out of the same pieces of kit, whether it's rolling off the gain, alternate picking, changing your phrasing and how you're playing things. It just really helps with that. So that's my kind of like trick for kind of how to tackle the third chorus guitar wise for this song. And that brings us to the end of the song, so outro time. So that was Showbiz and how you might want to approach trying to sound like Showbiz, and how I certainly approach sounding like it. As we've seen, there's a couple of options in there from how you might want to approach sounding it with your distortions, or kind of the way you might want to play the guitar itself for this. There's a lot of options really out there from what I've shown, and every combination possibly in between as well. This song is really quite a blank canvas in some aspects, so particularly with the chorus, with it being, the way I see it, just being a rhythm kind of guitar part for it. There's some variations you can have in that. The breakdown middle section again is a really good blank canvas to kind of throw anything you want in there, obviously within the scale that of this song is in. You can really kind of play anything in there. You can follow the vocal line the entire time, or just strum out a chord or do a little solo of yourself. So it's really offering a lot of stuff in there, and kind of finding variations of your playing in there is really going to help you master this sort of song and kind of take it to another level, and really kind of make it your own. Take this song and adapt it to how you might want to play it. But that's all up to you. I've just shown you how you might want to approach sounding like Showbiz. So if you like this video, please do let me know down in the comments, and give the video a like, and maybe subscribe if you're here for the first time and want to see more of how you might want to sound like Muse. But until then, I will see you in the next one. Bye.